Have you ever had so much brain energy that if you don't take it and apply it to something, you're just gonna lose your mind? Well, this video is me not losing my mind. Okay, so the reason I feel that way is because I know specific foods that can amplify a ketogenic state. Now, I'm not trying to say that you consume just specific things and it's gonna do this magical stuff. But if we understand the biochemistry of how we create some ketones, we can definitely add some different foods in there that are going to stimulate the process a little bit more to give us a short-term effect, but then also going to give you things that are going to give you a more long-term effect. So this video is divided into two categories: short-term, quick amplification of ketones, and more long-term adaptation to help you get more out of it long-term. All ways to amplify ketosis. Now, first thing we have to remember is foods that are more ketogenic aren't just what you're seeing some random infographic on Instagram that Billy Ketogenes is creating, if that person exists, right? We're talking about understanding the biochemistry. To create more ketones, you need to have more acetyl coenzyme A readily available. And I'm going to spare you the details on what that means. But basically, it means you need to have the reduced form of energy readily available, and that is acetyl coenzyme A. You also need to have low levels of insulin in conjunction with that. So we try to find foods that will readily break down into acetyl coenzyme A. So this first one that I'm going to jump off with is going to be concentrated high amounts of omega-3s. Now, this isn't just Thomas saying, go eat your healthy salmon, everybody. No, that's cool, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting a concentrated amount through either a high amount of fatty fish consumption or like 4, 5, 6 grams of omega-3 high-quality fish oil. Here's a study to back it up. The British Medical Journal published a study taking a look at 4 grams of omega-3 supplementation, and they found that it significantly increased free fatty acid oxidation, which shows that if you have more free fatty acids being oxidized, that's going to convert into acetyl coenzyme A and give you more energy. Now, when they looked at it in vitro, it was pretty interesting. They found in absence of glucose, adding fish oil greatly increased ketone production. But as soon as there was a glucose molecule in there, didn't have the effect. Which means if you are doing keto, you have to be pretty strict keto for this to take effect. Don't be having carbs along with it. Take your omega-3s in without carb consumption along with the fats that you're consuming, and you will likely get a more ketogenic effect where you produce more ketones. It's powerful and it works. Now, the next thing I need to talk about is I need to clear the air on something. Coconut oil versus MCT. There's confusion out there. Some people say that MCT is more ketogenic. Some people say that coconut oil is more ketogenic because it's more broad spectrum. MCTs are a component of coconut oil, but coconut oil is mostly saturated fat, mostly lauric acid and other fats. So if you look at a long tail graph over a longer period of time, coconut oil is more ketogenic because it breaks down slower. But the spike is going to be higher from straight C8 MCT oil, period. Now, I want you to look at the chart that's popping up on the screen right now. Now, if you look at the graph, you're going to see that C8 MCT oil, along with sunflower oil, is just as good as C8 with coconut oil. Well, what does that mean? It means that the C8 is the driving factor here, because sunflower oil is not a super ketogenic fat. So the C8 is driving up the value of how powerful that combination is. But it's very similar with coconut oil, which implies that neither coconut oil or sunflower oil are driving the bus here. It's all about the C8. But the other thing that's interesting is if you look at the ones that have glucose with it too, like coconut oil plus glucose, well, you'll see that it barely affected ketone production. So coconut oil is really powerful to take even if you're having some carbs too. But the point here is nothing beats straight C8 MCT oil. It is kind of the golden goose for immediate, quick ketone production. All right, now let's get goaty. Okay, this next one is goat cheese that is hard and aged. Goat cheese or goat milk on its own is already highly ketogenic because it has a lot of capric acid, which is C10. So C8 MCT oil, C12, like in coconut oil, split the difference and you have a goat, okay, C10. So now, problem is goat milk, things like that, there's sugar in them, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But goat cheese, especially hard-aged goat cheese, is going to have a high amount of that good old capric acid that we need that's going to convert into ketones faster, in conjunction with the fact that when it's hard and aged, it's going to have a higher omega-3 profile. In fact, there's studies that demonstrate that it has a significantly higher omega-3 profile than almost any other cheese. So that combines the two aforementioned things, right? We're going to have, of course, the goat cheese, but we're also going to have the omega-3s that we're talking about. Okay, I rest my case on that one. Now we want to talk about two things that you can kind of add to your diet: green tea and coffee. These are the two most amplifying things that you can do with your ketogenic diet as far as substitutes go. Okay, EGCG works in a different way because it acts upon the genes itself. So it modifies genes to be more susceptible to fat oxidation, meaning it modifies genes to make cells use fat better. That is huge, and that's a little bit more of a long-term thing. Now, caffeine is ketogenic, even though some people say that it's not. You see, caffeine temporarily does allow glucose to leave the glycogen store, which might disrupt ketone production for a hot minute. But by and large, caffeine is going to liberate fatty acids, and more fatty acids that are liberated mean more available for oxidation. Then you couple that with a genetic component, like you could with, say, adding lion's mane to it, and you really have a powerful result. The coffee that I use and that I recommend is 4 Sigmatic for this reason. I put a link down below if you want to check them out. 4 Sigmatic is a coffee that combines it with various adaptogenic mushrooms. The one that I like is the lion's mane coffee, because then I get a small amount of caffeine, I get the polyphenols from the coffee, but then I also get the lion's mane, which has a huge neural effect in making my brain feel a lot more lit up. So it's what I use on filming days, it's what I use when I'm fasting. I use it almost every single day. There's a special link with special access down below if you want to try their coffee. Not to mention it's super easy in a little packet instant form too if you want to add it to hot or cold water. So thank you 4 Sigmatic for the continued support on this channel, and make sure you check them out down below. Now we're going to migrate over to how you can amplify ketosis over the longer haul, and that's with what's called mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondrial biogenesis is allowing your cells to adapt over time to using ketones as a fuel source. So we talked about how to spike the ketone levels higher, but how do we adapt the mitochondrial machinery to use those ketones better? 2 sides to the equation. I want to use them better. You already got the fuel. Now, how do we improve the injectors to actually use that fuel, right? First one is copious amounts of olive oil. I have switched over from using a lot of saturated fats to using more olive oil lately, and it's not just because it's heart healthy, it's because there's compounds in it like hydroxytyrosol. Now, hydroxytyrosol increases levels of PGC1A. PGC1A is sort of the end result that we are looking for with mitochondrial biogenesis. It's a genetic kind of encoding that tells us, oh, okay, mitochondria needs to adapt, needs to go through biogenesis. Biogenesis is sort of the rebirthing, where mitochondria expands into new mitochondria that adapts to different fuels. Okay? Mitochondria is our energy powerhouse within a cell, and it needs to constantly evolve to be able to process different fuels. And we try to encourage that, again, with things like green tea that can stimulate that, or in this case, olive oil. Now let's move on to some other ones. Curcumin is another one. Adding curcumin and turmeric to the foods that you eat. So many studies that talk about curcumin and its positive effect as an inflammatory modulator, but in this case, what about the mitochondria? Well, there's studies that show that it increases mitochondrial count in white adipose tissue, indicating that it actually increases the amount of mitochondria we have. If we have more mitochondria, we have more powerhouses, more power plants to convert those ketones. So let's say we have 100 ketones in the blood, random unit of measure, 100 ketones in the blood, but we only have 10 mitochondria. Well, it's going to take a while to process those, ketones and actually use them as fuel, right? But if we have 100 ketones and 100 mitochondria, energy is going to happen a lot faster, right? So more mitochondria, the better. Curcumin has that effect, which is pretty darn interesting. So now it's added to my drinks, it's added to my meals, and it's so nonchalant, I hardly even know I'm doing it these days. This last one is pretty cool. I could tell you straight up, go take a selenium supplement, and you probably run to the store and get one. But why do a supplement when you can do a whole food? That's always my thing, right? So having a couple of Brazil nuts a day, just mixed into the routine, is pretty darn easy. But it's super effective. Remember PGC1A that I talked about, how I said that's kind of the goal? We want PGC1A to elevate because that means that we have more mitochondrial biogenesis. Well, if we get further down the biochemical world land, we start seeing that PGC1A is acting upon something called NRF1. That's the target, right? Well, it turns out that selenium directly stimulates NRF1 and binds to the actual receptor and allows mitochondrial biogenesis to occur. So selenium could be really one of the roots of this. And on a ketogenic diet, we lose some of our trace minerals. We lose some of our minerals because we're urinating a lot. It's just kind of natural. So if we add selenium back into the diet in a good, healthy, whole food form, like with Brazil nuts, we can have an effect not only on PGC1A, but on NRF1 to allow us to develop more mitochondria to get into a deeper state of ketosis. I know this has been a lot. It's a lot to swallow, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to help people get the most out of their ketogenic diet. So as always, I'll see you tomorrow.